The worst day of my life started with the most beautiful sunrise I'd ever seen over Lake Michigan. September 15th, 2024, my daughter Jessica's wedding day in downtown Chicago. I should have known it was too perfect to last. I'd been planning this day for 23 years, ever since Jessica was 5 and announced she'd marry Prince William someday. Well, she didn't get the prince, but she got Marcus, a successful investment banker from Lake Forest with a trust fund bigger than my annual salary as a high school English teacher. The wedding venue was the Chicago History Museum, an elegant choice that cost more than I made in 2 years. Jessica had insisted on paying for everything herself, which wounded my pride but relieved my bank account. After her father David left us when she was 12, taking half our savings and all of my confidence, I'd struggled to give her the life she deserved. "Mom, you look nice," Jessica said when she saw me in the bridal suite, but her eyes swept over my JCPenney dress with barely concealed disappointment. I'd bought it on sale for $89, the most I could afford after contributing $3,000 to the wedding, money I'd scraped together by tutoring students after school for 6 months. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look absolutely stunning." And she did. The Vera Wang gown, custom-made and costing more than my car, transformed her into something ethereal. But there was a coldness in her blue eyes that reminded me painfully of her father. The morning progressed with photographer sessions where I felt increasingly invisible. Jessica's new family, Marcus's parents, wealthy and connected, with vacation homes in Martha's Vineyard and Aspen, commanded attention while I stood awkwardly on the sidelines. When the photographer asked for family photos, Mrs. Patterson, Marcus's mother, positioned herself prominently while suggesting I might be more comfortable in the background. "Mom," Jessica whispered to me during a brief moment alone, her voice sharp with anxiety, "please don't embarrass me today. Marcus's family, they're important people. His father knows the mayor personally. Just try to blend in, okay?" Her words hit me like a physical blow. This was my daughter, the child I'd raised alone for 11 years, the girl I'd read bedtime stories to every single night, the teenager I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. helping with college applications because we couldn't afford a counselor. "What do you mean by that, Jessica?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. "You know what I mean. Don't tell everyone about your teaching job, or that apartment in Rogers Park, or just don't draw attention to yourself. This day needs to be perfect." The ceremony was indeed perfect. If you ignored the way Jessica introduced me as my mother, Helen, while giving Marcus's parents lengthy, glowing introductions as my new father, renowned architect Charles Patterson, and my beautiful new mother, Catherine, who sits on 3 charity boards and just returned from their home in Italy. During the reception at the Union League Club, I sat at table 12. Not the family table, but somewhere between Jessica's college friends and Marcus's distant relatives. I watched my daughter dance with her new husband, laugh with her new family, and pose for countless photos that I wasn't invited to join. The final humiliation came during the toasts. Marcus's father spoke eloquently about family traditions and legacy. Jessica's maid of honor shared heartwarming stories about their friendship. When the microphone came to me, Jessica's mother, the woman who'd sacrificed everything to raise Jessica caught my eye and shook her head almost imperceptibly. "Actually, I think we're good on speeches," Jessica announced to the room. "Let's get back to celebrating." I sat there in my clearance dress, invisible and dismissed, while 400 guests returned to their conversations. The woman next to me, one of Marcus's aunts, leaned over with false sympathy. "Oh, that must be hard, dear, being replaced by a real family." I excused myself, found a bathroom, and cried for 20 minutes. When I returned, Jessica was opening gifts. Mine, a handmade photo album chronicling her life from birth to college graduation, filled with pictures from every birthday, every school play, every achievement, sat unopened in a corner while she gushed over crystal vases and silver platters. The next morning, Jessica and Marcus left for their honeymoon in Santorini without saying goodbye. The thank you text I received was formal and brief. "Thank you for coming to the wedding. We'll talk when we get back." 2 weeks later, I was grading papers in my small apartment when my phone rang with news that would change everything. But on that wedding night, sitting alone with leftover cake and the realization that I'd lost my daughter to a world that saw me as an embarrassment, I had no idea that the universe was about to deliver justice in the most unexpected way. Hey there. I'm curious, where are you watching this story from? If you're feeling for Helen right now, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Trust me, what happens next will restore your faith in justice. The weeks following Jessica's wedding were the loneliest of my life. Chicago. In early October was beautiful, with golden leaves carpeting Lincoln Park, but I barely noticed. I threw myself into my work at Washington High School, staying late to grade papers and avoiding my empty apartment where every photo of Jessica felt like a reminder of my failure as a mother. My routine was simple and depressing. Wake up at 6 a.m., teach 5 classes of American literature to teenagers who were more interested in their phones than Fitzgerald, tutor struggling students until 7 p.m., then go home to microwave dinners and Netflix. The $3,000 I'd spent on the wedding had wiped out my savings, leaving me with exactly $247 in my checking account and a growing pile of bills. On October 1st, something broke inside me. I was walking past the 7-Eleven on Clark Street when I saw the Powerball sign, $380 million jackpot, next drawing tonight. I'd never been a gambler, never even bought a scratch-off ticket, but something about the cosmic unfairness of the past 2 weeks made me incredibly reckless. 5 quick picks, please, I told the cashier, pulling out a crumpled $10 bill from my purse. The numbers printed on those tickets were random and meaningless, 07, 14, 21, 35, 67, with Powerball 23. I stuffed them in my wallet and forgot about them. Meanwhile, Jessica and Marcus were posting Instagram stories from Greece, champagne on private. Yachts, sunset dinners overlooking the Aegean Sea, couples massages at luxury spas. Each post felt like a deliberate reminder that I didn't belong in their new life. The comments from her friends were telling, "You look so happy," and "living your best life," and "so glad you found your real family." Not a single photo included anything from our life together. No mention of the woman who'd worked double shifts as a waitress to pay for her dance lessons, who'd sold her grandmother's ring to buy Jessica's first car, who'd taken out student loans at 40 to finish my teaching degree so I could provide. Better for us both. October 15th was a Tuesday, and I was having the worst day imaginable. 3 of my students had failed their midterm essays, the principal had informed us about budget cuts that might eliminate my position, and my landlord had raised my rent by $200 a month. I was sitting in the faculty lounge, calculating whether I could afford groceries this week, when my phone rang. "Helen Martinez?" The voice was professional, unfamiliar. "Yes? This is Jennifer Walsh from the Illinois Lottery Commission. I'm calling to inform you that you are the sole winner of the October 1st Powerball drawing. The jackpot amount is $53,400,000. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "I'm sorry, what kind of scam is this?" "Ma'am, this isn't a scam. We've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks. You purchased 5 tickets at the 7-Eleven on Clark Street in Chicago. The winning numbers were 7, 14, 21, 35, 67, with Powerball 23. My heart stopped. Those numbers were burned into my memory from staring at that crumpled ticket every night, wondering what would happen if by some miracle. But miracles didn't happen to high school teachers from Rogers Park. Miracles happened to people like the Pattersons. "I need you to come to our offices with your ticket and valid ID," Jennifer continued. "Are you able to come in today?" I drove to the lottery office in a daze, clutching that wrinkled ticket like it might evaporate. The verification process took 3 hours, checking and double-checking, forms and more forms, until finally Jennifer smiled at me with genuine warmth. "Congratulations, Helen. After taxes, you'll receive approximately $32 million. How would you like to proceed?" $32 million. More money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes. More money than Marcus's trust fund. More money than the Pattersons' combined wealth. The first person I wanted to call was Jessica. I wanted to share this impossible joy with my daughter, to laugh about the absurdity of it, to maybe take her on a proper vacation for the first time since she was 8. But then I remembered her words at the wedding. Don't embarrass me. I remembered how she dismissed me, erased me, replaced me with people she deemed worthy. So instead, I called my sister Maria in Phoenix. Helen, you're lying, she said after I told her. This is not possible. You bought lottery tickets? You don't even buy lottery tickets. I have the check, Maria. I'm holding a check for $32 million. The silence stretched across the phone line until Maria finally whispered, Oh my God, Helen, what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What does a woman who spent 23 years being invisible suddenly do when she has the power to buy and sell the people who made her feel worthless? The next morning, I woke up in my tiny Rogers Park apartment and for a brief, beautiful moment, forgot about the lottery ticket. Then I saw the official envelope from the Illinois Lottery Commission on my nightstand, and reality crashed over me like a tsunami. $32 million. My first instinct was to quit my job, buy a mansion, and show up at Jessica's door with proof that I was worthy of respect. But something deeper held me back. Maybe it was 23 years of being practical, or maybe it was the hurt that still felt fresh from her wedding. Instead of making grand gestures, I decided to test something. I didn't tell anyone except Maria about the money. At school, I continued teaching with the same dedication, but with a secret that made every interaction fascinating. When Principal Rogers mentioned the budget cuts again, I had to bite my tongue to keep from offering to fund the entire English department myself. 3 weeks passed before Jessica finally called. Mom, we're back from Greece. Her voice was bright and artificial, the tone she used when she wanted something. It was absolutely incredible. Marcus's parents have offered to take us to their place in Aspen for Thanksgiving. Isn't that generous? That sounds lovely, I replied carefully. So, I wanted to let you know that we'll be doing Thanksgiving with the Pattersons this year. They have this amazing tradition with all their family friends, and it's really important for Marcus's career that we're there. There it was. Not an invitation to join, but an explanation for why I was being excluded. Again, I understand, I said, though my heart was breaking. Great. I knew you'd be reasonable about it. Oh, and Mom? Marcus and I have been talking about maybe buying a house in Lincoln Park. The real estate market is crazy right now, but his dad knows some people. We're looking at places around $2 million. $2 million. I could buy 10 houses like that without blinking. But Jessica had no idea that the mother she was casually discarding had more money than her precious new family. That evening, I drove to Lincoln Park and parked outside the house Jessica was probably talking about. It was beautiful, a restored Victorian with a perfect view of the lake. The realtor's sign read, Patterson and Associates exclusive listing, $2.2 million. On impulse, I called the number. Patterson and Associates, this is Michael Patterson speaking, Marcus's father. The man who'd positioned himself as the center of attention at the wedding while relegating me to the background. Hi, I'm interested in the Victorian on North Burling. Is it still available? Yes, it's a magnificent property. When would you like to schedule a showing? Actually, I'd like to make an offer, cash, today. There was a pause. In Chicago's competitive market, cash offers were gold, especially from serious buyers. Wonderful. May I ask your name? Helen Martinez. Another pause, longer this time. Martinez? That name sounds familiar. I was at Marcus and Jessica's wedding. I'm Jessica's mother. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear him trying to process how the woman in the clearance dress from JCPenney could possibly be making a cash offer on a $2.2 million house. I see. Well, Mrs. Martinez, this is quite a surprise. Perhaps we should meet to discuss this properly. We met at his office the next day. Charles Patterson was exactly as I remembered. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the kind of quiet arrogance that comes from inherited wealth. His office was designed to intimidate, with leather-bound law books and photographs of him with various Chicago politicians. "Helen," he said, not offering me a seat, "I have to say I'm curious about this sudden interest in real estate. Last I heard, you were a teacher?" "I am a teacher," I replied calmly. "I'm also someone with $32 million to spend." The change in his demeanor was instantaneous and embarrassing. The condescending smile vanished, replaced by the eager attention reserved for people with money. "Real money? 32 million? My goodness, that's... How did you... Powerball." October 1st drawing. I was the sole winner. Charles Patterson, the man who'd treated me like an invisible servant at my own daughter's wedding, suddenly became my best friend. He offered me coffee, asked about my investment strategy, and spent 45 minutes explaining why I absolutely needed his firm to handle my portfolio diversification. "The house on Burling is perfect for you," he gushed. "In fact, I know of several other properties that might interest someone of your caliber. There's a penthouse in River North, a estate in Lake Forest." I let him talk, watching this performance with fascination. This was the same man who'd suggested I'd be more comfortable in the background at family photos. Now he was practically genuflecting. "Charles," I interrupted, "does Jessica know about this meeting?" His smile faltered slightly. "Well, no. I thought perhaps we should discuss your situation before involving the children." "My situation?" "Your newfound wealth. It's quite an adjustment for everyone involved." I understood. He was worried that Jessica's embarrassing poor mother might suddenly become a problem for their carefully curated social circle. Nouveau riche was almost as bad as no rich at all in their world. "I'll take the house," I said simply. "Cash, full asking price. But I have one condition." "Of course, anything. I don't want Jessica to know I bought it, not yet." November arrived in Chicago with the kind of brutal cold that cuts through even the best winter coats. I'd been quietly wealthy for 6 weeks, and the isolation was becoming unbearable. The money sat in my accounts while I continued living in my small apartment, teaching my classes and pretending nothing had changed. The house on North Burling was mine now, though Jessica still didn't know. I'd had it professionally staged and had been visiting it secretly in the evenings, walking through rooms that could have been featured in Architectural Digest. It felt like playing house in someone else's life. On November 15th, Jessica called with news that shattered what remained of my heart. "Mom, I have something important to tell you." Her voice was excited but careful. "Marcus and I are pregnant." A grandmother. I was going to be a grandmother. The joy that flooded through me was overwhelming, followed immediately by a crushing sadness. Would I be excluded from this child's life too? Would I become the embarrassing grandmother they hid from their social circle? "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful news. How are you feeling? When are you due?" "June 15th. We just found out yesterday. Mom, we're so excited, but also, well, we're going to need help." Finally. After weeks of being pushed aside, Jessica needed something from me. I waited. "The thing is, we want to buy a house before the baby comes, somewhere safe with good schools. But even with Marcus's trust fund and our savings, we're a little short for the kind of neighborhood we want." "How short?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Well, we found this perfect place in Lincoln Park. It's $2.2 million and we have about half of that. We were wondering, could you maybe help us with the down payment? I know it's a lot to ask, but you're going to be this baby's grandmother." She had no idea she was asking me to help her buy the house I already owned. "How much help would you need?" "Maybe $200,000. I know it's your life savings and more, but we could pay you back slowly. Marcus's career is really taking off, and with both our salaries, $200,000. She thought that was my life savings and more. She was asking me to bankrupt myself for a house that I'd purchased as easily as buying groceries. Jessica, that's a lot of money for a teacher. I know. But Mom, this baby deserves the best, and you always said you'd do anything for family. There was a pause. Marcus's parents have already offered to match whatever you contribute. They're being so generous. Of course they were. They knew I was broke, so offering to match my contribution was safe. They probably expected me to come up with maybe $10,000 at most. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take your time. But Mom, I really hope you'll say yes. This would mean everything to us. And maybe it would make up for some things. Like being an embarrassment at her wedding. Like not being worthy of her new family. Like existing in a tax bracket that made her uncomfortable. That night, I called my sister Maria. You have to tell her, Maria said after I explained the situation. Helen, this is insane. Your own daughter is asking you to give her money for a house you already own. But what if she only wants me in her life because she thinks I can give her things? What if the only reason she's including me in this pregnancy is because she needs financial help? Then you'll know the truth. Isn't that better than this charade? I wasn't sure it was. The truth had the power to destroy what little relationship we had left. The next morning, I made a decision that would test everything. I called Jessica back. I've thought about your request, I said. I can't give you $200,000. The silence on the other end was deafening. When Jessica finally spoke, her voice was cold. I understand. I know it was a lot to ask. But, I continued, I can do something else. I can buy the house outright and let you live in it rent-free until you can afford to buy it from me. Another silence. This one shocked. Mom? What are you talking about? You can't afford a $2.2 million house. Actually, I can. Jessica, there's something I need to tell you. I told her everything. The lottery ticket, the October drawing, the $32 million. With each word, I could hear her world reshaping itself on the other end of the line. When I finished, Jessica was quiet for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Jessica, are you there? You've had this money for 6 weeks? Her voice was strange, hollow. You've been sitting on $32 million while you what? While I begged you for help. While I worried about how we'd afford the house. While I felt guilty for asking my broke mother to sacrifice her life savings, I hadn't expected her to be angry, grateful, maybe. Excited, certainly, but not angry. Jessica, I wanted to tell you, but after the wedding, after the way your new family treated me, what does that have to do with anything? I'm your daughter. You should have told me immediately. Should I have? The way you told me immediately. That you were embarrassed by me? The way you immediately included me in your new life with the Pattersons? The fight that followed was brutal and revealing. Jessica accused me of being vindictive and manipulative. I accused her of being shallow and ashamed of her own mother. We said things that couldn't be taken back, revealed hurts that had been festering for months. You know what, Mom? Maybe I was embarrassed at the wedding. Maybe I wanted one day where I didn't have to worry about whether people would judge me based on your job or your apartment or your clearance rack dress. Is that so terrible? Yes, I thought. It was exactly that terrible. The week after my fight with Jessica was torture. We didn't speak, didn't text, didn't acknowledge each other's existence. I moved into the North Burling house, my house, the one she'd wanted, and rattled around its beautiful, empty rooms like a ghost. Chicago in late November was gray and merciless, matching my mood perfectly. I'd won more money than most people dream of, but I'd lost the only thing that really mattered. To me, my sister Maria called daily, begging me to reach out to Jessica first. You're the mother, Helen. You're supposed to be the adult here. I am being the adult. I'm not rewarding her for treating me like garbage because I suddenly have money. But the truth was more complicated. I was terrified that Jessica only wanted a relationship with me now because I was wealthy. Every scenario I imagined ended with me wondering if she loved me or my bank account. On December 3rd, everything changed again. I was grading papers in what had become my favorite room, a sun-filled library overlooking Lincoln Park, when the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I could see two figures, one tall, one shorter, and obviously pregnant. Jessica and Marcus stood on my doorstep, looking nervous and cold. "Mom," Jessica said when I opened the door. "Can we come in? We need to talk." I led them to the living room, where Marcus immediately began admiring the crown molding and original hardwood floors. "This place is incredible, Mrs. Martinez. Much nicer than the photos suggested." Jessica shot him a look that could have frozen Lake Michigan. "Mom, I owe you an apology," she began, her hands resting on her barely visible bump. "The way I acted at the wedding, the things I said when you told me about the money, I was horrible. I waited. In my experience, Jessica's apologies usually came with conditions. I've been thinking about everything, and I realized something important." She took a shaky breath. "I spent so much time being embarrassed by our life that I forgot to appreciate what you sacrificed to give it to me." Marcus shifted uncomfortably beside her. This clearly wasn't the conversation he'd expected. "When I was growing up, I resented that we couldn't afford the things my friends had. I resented living in that small apartment, wearing clothes from discount stores, having a mother who worked multiple jobs just to keep us afloat. I thought if I could just get into a different world, a richer world, I'd finally be worthy of respect." Tears were streaming down her face now. "But you know what I learned living with the Pattersons these past months? Money doesn't make people kinder. It often makes them worse." Marcus's mother spent 20 minutes at our last family dinner complaining about her cleaning lady's attitude. His father talks about poor people like they're a different species. "Jessica," Marcus started, but she cut him off. "No, Marcus, this is important." She turned back to me. "Mom, you raised me to value hard work, education, and treating everyone with dignity. Those are real values, not the superficial status obsessions I got caught up in." I felt something loosening in my chest, but I wasn't ready to forgive yet. "That's a beautiful speech, Jessica, but it doesn't change what happened. You asked me not to embarrass you at your own wedding. You excluded me from family photos. You treated me like a liability instead of the woman who raised you alone for 11 years. You're right. I did all of those things, and they were unforgivable." She leaned forward, her blue eyes, so much like mine, filled with pain. "But Mom, I don't want your money. I never wanted your money. Then what do you want?" "I want my mother back. I want my child to know their grandmother, the woman who stayed up all night when I had pneumonia, who worked 3 jobs to pay for my college, who never once made me feel like I was a burden, even though I know how hard it was." Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the expensive sofa. "Jessica, how do I know this isn't about the money? How do I know that if I was still broke and living in Rogers Park, you'd still want me in your life?" She was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. "You don't know, and I can't prove it to you with words. But I can show you." "How?" "I want you to give the money away." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "All of it." "Well, keep enough to live comfortably, but give the rest away. To schools, to scholarships for kids like I was. Let's see if our relationship can survive without your wealth as a factor." Marcus finally found his voice. "Jessica, what are you saying? That money could secure our future, our children's futures." "Our future should be secured by our own work, Marcus, just like my mother secured mine." Jessica's voice was strong now, determined. "Mom, if you give away that money and I still want you in my life, in our baby's life, then you'll know it's real. You'll know I love you for who you are, not what You have. I stared at my daughter, this woman I'd raised who was now challenging me to make the ultimate sacrifice. Not for her, but for the truth. And if I keep the money? Then we'll never know, will we? There will always be this question between us. Every birthday gift, every family vacation, every moment of happiness, we'll wonder if it's genuine or if it's just about the money. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock I'd never noticed before. Marcus looked like he was having a heart attack, but Jessica's gaze never wavered from mine. How much would you want me to keep? Enough. To quit teaching if you want to travel, to live without worry. Maybe $1 million? $29 million. She was asking me to give away $29 million to prove that our love was real. Subscribe and like this video if you're on the edge of your seat. What will Helen decide? The choice she makes next will change everything. Christmas morning. In Chicago, dawned crystal clear and brutally cold, the kind of day when Lake Michigan looks like a sheet of silver and the skyline cuts into the blue sky like jagged diamonds. I stood in the kitchen of my Lincoln Park house, the house that had started this whole journey, watching my daughter make pancakes while her 6-month bump pressed against the counter. 4 months had passed since Jessica's challenge to give. Away my lottery winnings, and the decision I'd made had transformed everything. On December 15th, I'd walked into the offices of the Chicago Community Trust with a check for $29 million. The staff had to bring me water and a chair when I told them what I wanted to do with the money. We'd established the Helen Martinez Education Foundation, providing full scholarships to low-income students pursuing teaching degrees. Your mother is either the most generous woman in Chicago or completely insane, Marcus had said to Jessica when he heard what I'd done. Both, Jessica had replied. That's what makes her extraordinary. Keeping $1 million had seemed impossibly extravagant, until I realized what freedom actually meant. I'd quit my job at Washington High School, though I missed the students terribly, and started volunteering 3 days a week at inner-city schools. No lesson plans, no bureaucracy, just the pure joy of helping kids discover literature. Mom, you're burning the bacon, Jessica called from the stove, pulling me back to the present. I rescued the bacon while she flipped pancakes, our movements synchronized from years of cooking together in much smaller kitchens. This had become our Saturday morning tradition. Jessica and Marcus would come over, and we'd make an elaborate breakfast while planning our week. Have you thought any more about the ultrasound? I asked, referring to the appointment scheduled. For next week, where they'd finally learn the baby's gender. We want it to be a surprise, Marcus said, setting the table with plates I'd never dreamed of owning. But Jessica has a theory. It's a girl, Jessica announced confidently. I can feel it. And Mom, if it is a girl, we want to name her Helen. I nearly dropped the bacon. Jessica, you don't have to. I want to. This little girl should be named after the strongest woman I know. The doorbell rang before I could respond, and Jessica went to answer it. I heard familiar voices. Maria had flown in from Phoenix for Christmas, along with her husband and 2 teenage kids. Behind them came an unexpected but welcome surprise. Dr. Patricia Williams, the director of the Community Trust, along with 3 scholarship recipients from the first class funded by my foundation. Helen. Patricia embraced me warmly. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but when I heard you were having Christmas breakfast, I couldn't resist bringing some people who wanted to thank you personally. The 3 students, Maya, a 19-year-old from Englewood who wanted to teach elementary school, David, a 23-year-old father of 2 pursuing secondary education, and Carmen, a former gang member now studying early childhood development, looked nervous but determined. Mrs. Martinez, Maya began, her voice shaking slightly. I wanted you to know that without your scholarship, I'd be working at McDonald's right now instead of studying at DePaul University. You saved my future. David stepped forward. My kids are going to grow up knowing their father is a teacher because of what you did. You didn't just change my life, You changed theirs too." Carmen was crying now. "Lady, I was headed nowhere good before I got the chance to go to school. Now I'm going to help kids like I was. That's because of you." I felt Jessica's hand slip into mine, squeezing tight. This was why she'd challenged me to give away the money, not to prove anything to her, but to show me what real wealth looked like. As we all crowded around the dining room table, sharing stories and laughter over pancakes and bacon, I realized something profound. The lottery had given me $32 million, but Jessica's challenge had given me something infinitely more valuable. The knowledge that I'd raised a daughter who valued character over cash, who understood that true legacy isn't what you leave in the bank, but what you leave in the world. "Mom," Jessica whispered as the conversation swirled around us, "do you ever regret it? Giving up all that money?" I looked around the table at Maria's kids hearing about college possibilities they'd never considered, at Marcus listening intently, to Carmen's story about transforming her life, at the young faces filled with hope and determination, at my pregnant daughter whose own child would grow up understanding that the greatest gift you can give someone is opportunity. "Never," I said, and meant it completely, not for a single second. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home and Jessica and Marcus had headed back to their apartment, I walked through the quiet house. In my study, I found a letter that had arrived the day before from a teacher in Tennessee whose classroom I'd helped fund through the foundation. She'd sent pictures of her students, all from families struggling to make ends meet, reading books that my money had purchased. "Your generosity has given these children something priceless," she'd written. "The belief that education can change their lives." I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, bitter, invisible, dismissed by my own daughter as an embarrassment. The lottery had given me the power to buy respect, but it was giving that power away that had earned me something much more valuable: the respect of people whose opinions actually mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Thank you for the most perfect Christmas. Baby Helen and I love you more than all the lottery jackpots in the world." Baby Helen, my granddaughter, would grow up in a world where her grandmother was known not for winning the lottery, but for what she chose to do with the winning. She'd learn that real wealth isn't about what you accumulate, but what you contribute. Outside, snow began to fall over Chicago, covering the city in pristine white. I settled into my favorite chair with a book, surrounded by the quiet luxury of a life well lived. The house was beautiful, but it was the relationships I'd rebuilt and the lives I'd touched that made it feel like home. Sometimes the greatest fortune isn't the money you win. It's discovering what you're truly worth when you choose to give it all away. And sometimes the daughter who breaks your heart is the same one who teaches you how to heal it. The lottery had made me rich, but Jessica's challenge had made me wealthy in ways that no jackpot ever could. Please subscribe and like this video if this story of love, forgiveness, and true wealth touched your heart. Stories like Helen's remind us that sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what really matters.